Before I get started, I just want to say Season 0 of Did I Get What I Paid For will be ending soon. There's a lot of reasons for that. The most important of which is that I've been getting copyright claims on public domain movies, which makes no sense. I thought to myself, why court danger with public domain movies that no one gives a crap about when I could at least, do something that might bring views into the channel. So I'm going to finish up the last 2 or 3 public domain movies I had on the docket and then move on to bigger and better things. But before I do that, I'm going to take a brief hiatus. Maybe do a few more radical responses, a few more episodes of The Sincerest Form of Flattery, and then get back to this. I want to announce the Where's the Great Gazoo contest, because he's hidden in 3 places in this video. The first person to email me at parodyerrorfilms@gmail.com with the correct answer will win a very special prize. You know how I said I'm going to do non-public domain movies soon? Well, I will email you a list of every unwatched DVD in my collection. And you get to pick one that ends up in the first real season of the series. Oh, and by anyone, I mean anyone not affiliated with Parody Error Films. That means, sorry Matt, you can't win. Today's movie, Nancy Drew Reporter, is one I want to get to for a really long time. And the stars have aligned to make it possible. One of the things that fell into place was the CW launching a Nancy Drew TV series this fall. I figured, if anyone's going to cash in on that, it should be me. From the age of 5 to maybe about the age of 11 or 12, I read a lot of those bubblegum shoe genre detective stories. Nate the Great, Encyclopedia Brown, the Hardy Boys, and yes, the occasional Nancy Drew. My favorite were E.W. Hildnick's McGurk series, but no one in the United States really remembers those. I really liked those because each member of the team had their own role, sort of like on a real police force. But, if a Nancy Drew was lying around and there was nothing else to read, I wouldn't say no. I'm going to skip the history segment this time. Nancy Drew has been around so long and been translated into so many different media, doing a history section could be a video unto itself. Hey, if any of you want to see that, I will totally do it. You just have to leave something in the comments and beg me. Come on, beg me! Our movie begins with a newspaper rolling hot off the presses. And I know that's sort of detective movie cliche 101, but this is a mystery film for kids, so I'm willing to give it a little bit of leeway. Anyway, the editor is really pissed off that the Star reporter hasn't reported in for work. He starts bugging the Cub reporter. Then the assistant editor comes in and says, "Hey, remember that junior reporter contest we did about 3 months ago? Well, the 4 or 5 people we voted in as finalists are here. We've got to give them their stories." He haphazardly puts some milk run stories in a hat. Each of the contestants pulls one out. Nancy Drew is nonplussed with the story that she gets. So she goes over to the Star reporter's desk and steals that note the Cub reporter left. So instead of covering the flower show or the dog who wins the Nobel Prize, she ends up covering a murder inquest. It turns out the woman on trial is the one mentioned in the newspaper. Only she claims the victim was her foster mother, and that she loved her. On the other hand, she was the only one who had access to that kind of poison. She was the last person to see the old woman alive. And the old woman had recently rewritten her will, so that she was the prime beneficiary, even though her biological son was still alive. I mean, he's still doing pretty well for himself, but he seems a little resentful that he's not getting much of the money. To everyone else, that's an open and shut case. But Nancy Drew thought she was innocent. Nancy has her story, and she's about to head back to the newspaper when this stocky guy with a malformed ear rear-ends her. He damages her bumper and, well, he refuses to exchange insurance information. So she decides to get into a long car chase. Eventually they end up in this abandoned building guarded by a cop. And it turns out to be the old lady's house. You know, our murder victim. What a coinky-dink. Nancy talks to the guard. They go searching the grounds. They find the guy. He claims he's with the gas company. The cop says, okay. But Nancy seems a little suspicious. Nancy goes back to the newspaper to file her story. Only it turns out in the hour or so she spent tracking down McGoonface, every paper in town managed to get it for the 5 o'clock edition. The editor's pissed. He had to get the story directly from the DA's office. And, well, that makes Nancy mad. Once she gets home, she has one of those, oh, how was your day type conversations with her dad. Nancy tells him that she thinks Eula Denning, the murder suspect, is innocent. He says, you know, she's probably guilty. Sometimes people who look nice do horrible things, and sometimes people who are a little shady looking turn out to be good people, which I have to say is good advice. Nancy disagrees. So she gets in her roadster, starts the engine, and kaboom! Explosion. And the movie's over. Kidding. It turns out she has a friend, Ted Nickerson. His little sister and her little buddy make mischief everywhere they go. They put whistle bombs in Nancy's engine. In a real Nancy Drew book, that would have been a real nice cliffhanger to end out a chapter. Nancy comes up with a scheme so that she and Ted can go to prison and see Eula Denning. But they have to jump through quite a few hoops to do it. After telling them the bottle of poison was put away in a special drawer and would still have fingerprints on it from whoever touched it last, Ted and Nancy go back to the old woman's house to look for it. Ted distracts him by playing cards while Nancy breaks in. Once they get it, they decide to go to the police station instead of, giving it to the actual cop who's already there. Which turns out to be a really stupid decision on Nancy's part. On the way to the police station, she gets robbed. The only thing that was stolen was the bottle of film developing fluid. The poison. Not Nancy's purse, not Nancy's car keys, not her fancy jewelry, just the poison. And we get another chase sequence, which stops only when Nancy crashes headlong into the chief of police. When Nancy gets home, she tries to talk her dad into taking the case again. He explains his reasons and still says no. Then Nancy explains what she's been doing all day, and he says, well, you should have gone to the cops. Wait. In spite of all the changes to the source material, up until this point, I was really digging this movie. But retro Nancy Drew? Going to the cops for help? No way, Jose. The River Heights Police Department is only good for cleanup. Since she can't sleep, Nancy tries to sweet talk her dad one more time. This time saying, you know how you always taught me to keep my promises? Well, I made a promise here and, gotta, and somehow that works. And then we get this, which, if you take into context that he's her father, not some guy 15 to 20 years older than her that she just happens to be banging, well, it seems kind of creepy. Nancy heads back to the newspaper, and she realizes that the malformed ear that guy had is really common among prize fighters. So she heads to the archives to figure out who he might have been. And she finds a picture of a guy named Soxy Anthems. When she gets home, she decides to con Ted Nickerson into another scheme. This time they're going to infiltrate the gym that Soxy works out at. Unfortunately, they didn't plan for every contingency, so Ted ends up having to fight Soxy in the ring. Nancy comes up with a quick fix. She goes to the payphone. She calls the gym. She claims to be Soxy's girlfriend. Then she hangs up. Soxy comes to get his call, but since he has his gloves on, he can't dial. So the guy at the counter has to do it for him. And Nancy's there to lip read the number. Not only does Nancy have to wait to get her next set of clues, but Ted is now safe. Well, from Soxy, not from Nancy, obviously. When they get home, Ted dials all the numbers that Nancy was able to lip read. After the second or third attempt, they get the right one. They find out it's a hotel, and that Soxy's girlfriend is at the Mandarin Cafe. Nancy and Ted go to check it out. Unfortunately, when they get there, they find out Pebbles and Bam Bam are in the trunk. They all have to eat dinner. Who should be in the booth next to them but the woman who stole the bottle of poison and the old woman's son? And they look kind of cozy. Nancy falls back on her prime weapon. That's right, the payphone. This time she calls Soxy and tells him exactly what she saw. She uses the commotion that Soxy caused as an excuse to get the check, but she hadn't counted on 2 extra meals. So when they go to pay the bill, they're 65 cents short. The old Chinese man was going to make them wash dishes for 3 days to pay off the bill. But Jughead came up with an idea. Have them sing for their tips. It's a stupid Hollywood trope, but somehow it works. Nancy goes back to the newspaper for the final day of the contest. Another girl is about to win when she turns in her story. The editor says, "I love it, I love it, I love it." And it goes out. The one local cop who doesn't seem to mind her playing private investigator asks her, why would she print a story if she knew it wasn't true? Nancy tells him she was trying to lure the bad guys out of hiding. The cop says, I wish I had thought of that. So they go to the hotel and set up a sting. And for no real reason, the cop dresses up like an old woman. He goes into Soxy's old room and plants some 1930s style radio bugs. Then he starts looking for the poison bottle. Unfortunately, the old woman's son shows up. He and the old woman's son get into a fight and, well, come on, you know how this ends. The old woman's son beats the crap out of him. Then he takes the evidence. Ted and Nancy overhear, so they make chase. He tricks them into going into an electrical closet and locks the door. By some miracle, each letter of the name of the hotel is controlled by a separate circuit. Nancy and Ted adjust the letters so the electricians will be forced to open the door. Calvin and Susie notice Nancy's car unguarded. They decide to fill it up with more of those whistle bombs. Then they get bored and go to the movies. The old man's son comes by and steals the car. The constant boom, boom, boom sounds make it really easy for the police to follow them. And Nancy's a hero. But Wednesday and Pugsley have gotten kicked out of the movie theater for setting off some fireworks. So, did I get what I paid for? This movie wasn't based on any particular Nancy Drew novel, but it sure captures the spirit. The cliffhangery goodness, the nice slice of Americana, the simple mystery, the unintentional, almost polite racism. That's 1930s Nancy Drew to a T. Well, apart from that last bit, there's only one other annoyance to this movie. Teen detectives with kid sidekicks. This movie has Scrappy Doo disease and Cousin Oliver syndrome at the same time. I didn't think that was possible. I want to talk about Benita Granville. Most of the time, when media that is meant for children is adapted to the screen, very little thought is put into casting. Oh yeah, people are spoiled by the Harry Potter movies now, but that's more of a modern thing. Back in those days, you had Benita Granville as Nancy Drew and Benita Granville as Nancy Drew. That's really it. This movie was made in 1939, the same year as Wizard of Oz. Now, I love that movie, but in the books, Dorothy's 8 years old. Judy Garland is a decade too old for the role, at least. This movie has its flaws, but I liked it. I mean, this could just be the pain of Dick Tracy meets Gruesome and Utopia weighing on me, but I don't think so. I think I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It came as one of 48 movies in a box set of 50 films that I paid $5 for, so 11 cents? Yeah. If you can get this movie for 11 cents, I'd say go watch it. And you know how I said I was going to do some non-public domain movies? Well, I lied about starting in a few weeks. I'm doing a bonus review in this very episode! Can you guess what it is? If you guessed Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase in 2019, sorry, you're wrong. If you guessed Nancy Drew from 2007, you said the magic word, the deck comes down, you win a prize. If you're a Nancy Drew fan, you're gonna love this movie. They really only make one change to the character. They make her an awkward geek girl, which she's totally not in the books. She's the mythical popular geek girl. But the movie gets away with it by having her move to California. The same graceful intelligence and compassion that make her the it girl of River Heights would make her a bit of a weirdo in LA. The only problem is they try to shove her into the same geek girl mold that Hollywood's been throwing at us since 1976 Carrie. But unlike the star of Stephen King's first novel, Nancy Drew doesn't take shit. She's got too much stuff to do. Nancy and her father moved to California. Thanks to her manipulations, they're now living in this mansion. It used to belong to a movie star named Delia Descott. She died under mysterious circumstances 25 years ago. Nancy is determined to solve the case. Adults watching this movie might think the name Delia is a reference to the Black Dahlia murders, but let's not go there and say we did. One of the great Easter eggs of this movie was Delia Descott's IMDb page. Every movie on it that wasn't essential to the plot in some way was the name of either a Nancy Drew novel or a Hardy Boys book. Nancy goes to school, she deals with all the mean girl shit. She makes one friend, but he's a 12-year-old who skipped 2 grades, and he's got a massive crush on her. And they try to solve the case, which as it develops involves murder, a corrupt manager, and a long-lost daughter. Emma Roberts was amazing as Nancy Drew. I know I said the same thing about Benita Granville, but they're both true, for very different reasons. Just like I love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I love how they keep the iconic classic look, at least for the River Heights characters. It makes it feel like a 1930s to 1960s Nancy Drew book brought to life. Having her solve an actual murder is a little jarring, but it reminds me of the Nancy Drew books of the late 80s and early 90s that I grew up with. So it's sort of a gestalt of all the best aspects of the character. It works. It really, really works. The only real change I would have made to this movie was the amount of time spent on the boys at school. I would have much rather learned more about Delia's daughter and granddaughter. How did her daughter deal with child abandonment? What happened to her daughter's father? Granted, exploring those issues a little more might have cost the movie its PG rating. But I'm sure if they tried hard enough, there'd be a way to do that without invoking the wrath of the MPAA. Bastards. I know the show is supposed to be called Did I Get What I Paid For, but I checked this movie out from the library, so it's more of a how much would I pay for it? If I saw it at a flea market or Big Lots or a Friends of the Library sale, or I would pay up to 200 copper heads of Abraham Lincoln. I still don't have that Patreon stuff up, but let's just get the credits and preview. See you later, guys.